Hi guys, this is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe if you have yet to do so. And if you get anything from my work, a connected dot, an epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description of this channel. No! AlleyCatCreations211.com is where you can see my paint and zips, all the paintings that I do, drawings, hyper realistic, pyramids, gem skulls, business card holders that are gems or solid epoxy. I have candles. I do a whole plethora of things on my channel. And if you're interested in purchasing anything or trying to get something commissioned, please email me. That is the best way for you to get in contact with me. I am back to work, so I am not doing the messenger thing all day long or night because I have to sleep. 3D memberships is another great way to contribute to the channel and to myself. And with that, you guys get channel member only videos, which is oracle card readings, and you also get entries into my raffles. I try to give away at least 3 things a month. You have to figure out something for the end of the month, depending upon fundage, because things are very expensive and I can't afford much. And I would like to thank our channel member, Miss Charlene, for making Pinky Flamingo. This is Pinky. Look at those eyelashes. This is Pinky with chicken and penguin. And this is a beautiful big flamingo. I have to name flamingo. Maybe I will do a contest or a poll tomorrow when I go live. Look how amazing this is. I love my channel members. Thank you so much, Charlene. This brings so much joy to my heart, and it definitely has uplifted me with everything going on in my life. So we're gonna put Awesome Flamingo by Grateful. Um, yeah. Uh, just for everybody that does Blavatsky, I am back at work. I don't know what's going on. My hours are a little wonky. It's the beginning of school, so things are still like in the working out stages of schedules and stuff. I'm already kind of checked out. Not I even my kiddos didn't even start yet, and I'm already checked out. Yeah, I have to start walking into my soul's purpose ASAP, and I don't know how to get that done. You know, love life. But today is Blavatsky, The Secret Doctrine. We're still on stanza 12, I believe. And we're going to continue on with Western speculations founded on the Greek and Puranic traditions. Um, So bear in mind that my schedule and things that are going to come in the next 2 weeks, I might not get my videos out on time, and I do apologize. It's just I'm going to probably cause myself too much exhaustion, and I'm going to need a couple of days to recoup from being on my feet and running after children and jumping on stages and doing all kinds of crazy nonsense. Yay. And just once again, I do not pronounce a lot of these words properly, and I am not here to disrespect. I do have projection issues getting words out of my mouth properly. There are some words I cannot get out. I have mouth issues and also dyslexia, so please keep that in mind. I'm not here to try to frustrate you. It frustrates me just as much as it annoys your eardrums. So thanks. Thus, it becomes natural to find that on every such meager data as have reached the profane historian Rudbeck a Swedish scientist tried to prove about 2 centuries ago that Sweden was the Atlantis of Plato. He thought even that he had found it in the configuration of ancient Uppsala, the situation and measurements given by the Greek sage of the capital of Atlantis. As Bailey proved, Rudbeck was mistaken, but so was Bailey likewise, and still more. For Sweden and Norway had formed part and parcel of ancient Lemuria, and also of Atlantis on the European side, just as eastern and western Siberia and the place in Russia that had the earthquakes. I am not pronouncing that properly, but that's the one that had the earthquakes. I think the volcano also had belonged to it on the Asiatic. Only once more, when was it? We could find it out approximately only by studying the Puranas if we will have naught to do with the secret teachings. 3/4 of a century have already elapsed since Captain, now Colonel, Wilford brought forward his fanciful theories about the British Islands being the White Island and the Atala of the Puranas. This was sheer nonsense, as Atala is one of the 7 Dwarpas, or islands belonging to the Nether Lokas, one of the 7 regions of Atala, the Anthropods. Moreover, as Wilford shows, the Puranas place it on the 7th zone or 7th climate, rather on the 7th measure of heat, which thus locates it between the latitudes of 24 and 28 degrees north. It is then to be sought on the same degree as the Tropic of Cancer, whereas England is between the 50th and 60th degrees of latitude. Wilford speaks of it as Atala, Atlantis, the White Island. And in volume, I can't read those Roman numerals for the life of me. Son, whatever. The Journal of Asiatic Researches, page 28. Page 280. There's my brain. The white devil, the demon of terror. For he says, in there, the Hindu and Mohammedan romances, we see Kai Caucus going to the mountains of Ashbur, at the foot of which the sun sets. The Dev Fid, or white devil, of the Puranas, who abode was on the 7th stage of the world, answering to the 7th zone of the Buddhists, or the White Island. Now here the Orientalists have been and are still facing the Sphinx riddle, the wrong solution of which will ever destroy their authority, if not their persons, in the eyes of every Hindu scholar, even those who are not initiates. For there is not a statement in the Puranas on the conflicting details of which Wilford based his speculations, which has not several meanings and does not apply to both the physical and the metaphysical worlds. If the old Hindus divided the face of the globe geographically into 7 zones, climates, dwarpas, and even into 7 hells and 7 heavens, allegorically, that measure of 7 did not apply to both cases to the same localities. It is the North Pole, the country of Meru, which is the 7th division, as it answers to the 7th principle, or 4th metaphysically, of the occult calculation, for it represents the region of Atma, of pure soul and spirituality. Hence, Pushkara is shown as the 7th zone, a dwarpa, which encompasses the Kusha Ocean, or Ocean of Milk, the ever-frozen white region in the Vishnu and other Puranas, and Pushkara, which its 2 Varashas leads directly to the foot of Meru, for it is said that the 2 countries north and south of Meru are shaped like a bow, and that 1/2 of the surface of the earth is on the south of Meru and the other half on the north of Meru, beyond which is half of Pushkara. Geographically, then, Pushkara is America, north and southern, and allegorically, it is the promulgation of Jambu Dwarpa, in the middle of which stands Meru, for it is the country inhabited by beings who live 10,000 years, who are free from sickness or failing, where there is neither virtue nor vice, caste or laws, for these men are of the same nature as the gods. Wilford is inclined to see Meru in Mount Atlas and locates there also the locus. Meru, we are told, which is the Swarloka, the abode of Brahma and of Vishnu, and the Olympus of Indian exoteric religion, is described geographically as passing through the middle of the earth globe and protruding on either side. On its upper station are the gods. On the neither or south pole is the abode of demons, hell. Interesting. How can then Meru be Mount Atlas? It's a good question. Besides which, Tara Ditra, a demon, cannot be placed on the seventh zone if the latter is identified with the white island, which is Sveta Dwarpa, for reasons given in the footnote. Wilford accuses the modern Brahmins of having jumbled them islands and countries altogether. But he jumbled them still more. He believes that as the Brahmand, however you say that, Vayu Puranas divided the old continent into 7 dwarpas, said to be surrounded by a vast ocean, beyond which lie the regions and mountains of Atala. Hence, most probably, the Greeks divided the nations of Atlantis, which, as it could not be found after having once been discovered, they conceived to have been destroyed by some shock of nature. Finding certain difficulties in believing that the Egyptian priests, Plato, and even Homer had all built their notions of Atlantis and Atala, a neither region located at the southern pole, we prefer holding to the statements given in the secret books. We believe in the 7th continents, 4 of which have already lived their day. The 5th still exists, and 2 are to appear in the future. We believe that each of these are not strictly a continent in the modern sense of the word, but that each name from Jambu down to Pushkara refers to the geographical names given to the dry lands covering the face of the whole earth during the period of the root race in general, and to what remain of these after a geological race, Pralaya, as Jambu, for instance, and to those localities which will enter after the future cataclysms into the formation of new universal continents, peninsulas, or dwarpas, each continent being, in one sense, a greater or smaller region of dry land surrounded with water. Thus, that whatever jumble the nomenclature of these may represent to the profane, there is none, in fact, to him who has the key. Excuse me. Thus, we believe we know that though 2 of the Puranic islands, the 6th and 7th continents, are yet to come, nevertheless, they were or there are lands which will enter into the composition of the future dry lands of the new earths, whose geographical faces will be entirely changed, as were those of the past. Therefore, we find in the Puranas the Sakka Dwarpa, those of the past, is a continent, and that Sanka Dwarpa, as shown in the Vayu Purana, is only a minor island, one of the 9 divisions, to which Vayu adds 6 more, or Bharata Varasha, because Sanka Dwarpa was peopled by unclean foreigners, not pronouncing that, who worshipped Hindu divinities. Therefore, they were connected with India. Thus, the accounts for Sankahasura a king of a portion of Sanka Dwarpa, who was killed by Krishna. That king was resided in the palace, which was an ocean shell, and whose subjects lived in shells only, says Wilford. On the banks of the Nile, there were frequent contests between the Devats, divine beings and demigods, and the Dyatas, giants. But the latter tribe having prevailed, their king, Sankhasura, who resided in the ocean, made frequent incursions in the night. It is not on the banks of the Nile, but on the coast of Western Africa, south of where now lies Morocco, that these battles took place. There was a time when the whole of the Sahara Desert was a sea, then a continent as fertile as the Delta, and then only after another temporary submersion, it became a desert similar to the other wilderness, the desert of Shamo or Gobi. This is shown in Puranic tradition, for on the same page as above cited, it is said, the people were between two fires, for while Sankarsara was ravaging one side of the continent, Krausha, king of, however you pronounce that, used to desolate the other. Both armies thus changed the most fertile regions into a savage desert. That not only that last island of Atlantis spoken of by Plato, but a large continent first divided and then broken later on into 7 peninsulas or islands called dwarpas, preceded Europe is sure. It covered the whole of the North and South Atlantic regions, as well as portions of the North and South Pacific, and had islands even in the Indian Ocean, relics of Lemuria. The claim is collaborated by Indian Puranas, Greek writers, and Asiatic, Persian, and Mohammedan traditions. Wilford, who confuses surely the Hindu and the Muslim, it's Muslim, man. However, legends show this, however, clearly. And his facts and quotations from the Puranas give direct and conclusive evidence that the Aryan Hindus and other ancient nations were earlier navigators than the Phoenicians, who are now credited with having been the first seamen that appeared in the post-Diluvian times. This is what is given in the Journal of the Asiatic Society. In their distress, the few nations who survived in the war between the Vatas and Dyatas raised their hands to Bhagavan. Let him who can deliver us be our king, using the word I don't know what that is. A magic term understood by Wilford evidently, which reach through the whole country. It's I and a T, but it's not it. I'm sitting there like, what? Then comes a violent storm. The waters of the Kari are strangely agitated. When there appeared from the waves a man afterwards called, I'll just say it, but it's not, at the head of the numerous army, saying, no fear. Once again, there's a lot of words that is really pissing me the F off. I cannot pronounce, nor am I attempting to butcher this, so I do apologize. I knew this was going to happen. And the scattered the enemy, the king, explains Wilford, is a subordinate incarnation of Myra, who reestablished peace and prosperity throughout all Sanka Dwarpa. Through my eyesight today too is bad. Barbara Dessa or Arabia. Again, I do apologize, guys. It's very frustrating. Surely, if the Hindu Puranas give a description of wars on continents and islands situated beyond Western Africa in the Atlantic Ocean, if their writers speak of Barbaras, I want to say that's Barbados, and other people, and even no, that's not Barbados, but Barbaras, and other people such as Arabs, they were never known to navigate or cross the Kalapani, the black waters of the ocean, in the days of the Phoenician navigation. Then their Puranas must be older than those Phoenicians, placed at 2,000 to 3,000 years BC. At any rate, those traditions must have been older as. In the above accounts, writes an adept, the Hindus speak of this island as existing in great power. It must therefore have been more than 11,000 years ago. But another calculation and proof may be adduced of the great antiquity of these Hindu Aryans, who knew of because they had once dwelt in it, and described the last surviving island of Atlantis, or rather of the remnant of the eastern portion of the continent, which had perished soon after the upheaval of the two Americas. The two Varashas of Pushkara thus may be demonstrated, moreover, on an astronomical calculation by an adept who criticizes Wilford for recalling that the Orientalists had brought forward concerning the Mount Ashbur, at the foot of which the sun sets, where this was the war between the Devatas and the Daitas. He says, we will consider then the latitude and longitude of the lost island and of the remaining Mount Ashbur. It was on the seventh stage of the world in the seventh climate, which is between the latitude 24 degrees and latitude 28 degrees north. This island, the daughter of the ocean, is frequently described as lying in the west, and the sun is represented as setting on the foot of its mountain, Atlas, or Nyla, no matter the name, and fighting the white devil of the White Island. Now, considering the statement from its astronomical aspect, and knowing that Krishna is the incarnation son Vishnu, a solar god, and that he is said to have killed Dev Sefid, the white giant, a possible personification of the ancient inhabitants of the foot of Atlas, perchance Krishna may be only a representation of the vertical beams of the sun. Those inhabitants, the Atlantids, are, we have seen, accused by Diodorus of daily cursing the sun and ever fighting his influence. This is an astronomical interpretation, of course, but it will now be proved that Sankhasura and Sencha Dwarpa and all their history is all geographically and ethologically Plato's Atlantis in Hindu's dress. It was just remarked that since in the Puranic accounts the island is still existing, then those accounts must be older than 11,000 years, elapsed since Sancha Dwarpa, or the Poseidon of Atlantis, disappeared. It is not barely possible that Hindus should have known the island still earlier. Let us turn again to astronomical demonstrations, which make this quite plain if one assumes, according to the said adept, that at the time when the summer tropical color passed through the Pleiades, when Coelineus would be upon the equator, and when Leo was vertical to Silion at sunset, that would Taurus be vertical to the island of Atlantis at noon. This explains perhaps why the Singhalese, their heirs of the Rakshasas and giants of Lanka, and the direct descendants of Singha or Leo, became connected with the Sancha Dwarpa or the Poseidonus, Plato's Atlantis, only as shown by McKee's Sphinxad. This much have occurred about 23,000 years ago, astronomically. At the same time, the obliquity of the ecliptic must have been rather more than 27 degrees, and consequently Taurus must have passed over Atlantis or Sancha Dwarpa, and that it was so clearly demonstrated. The sacred bull Nandis was brought from Bharata to Sancha to meet Rasha Taurus every Kapla. But when those of the White Island who descended originally from Sveta Dwarpa, who had mixed with the Dyatas, giants of the land of inequity, had become black with sin, then Nandi remained forever in the White Island, or Sveta Dwarpa. Those of the fourth world race lost Ahum, says the commentaries. Asber, whether the peak of Tenerife or not, was a volcano when the sinking of the Western Atala, or hell, began, and those who were saved told the tale to their children. Plato's Atlantis perished between water below and fire above, great mountains vomiting flames all the while. The fire-vomiting monster survived alone out of the ruins of the unfortunate island. Do the Greeks accuse of borrowing a Hindu fiction, Atala, and inventing from it another Atlantis? Stand also accused of getting their geographical notions and the number 7 from them? The famous Atlantis exists no longer, but we can hardly doubt that it did once, says Proclus from Marsilius, who wrote a history of Ethiopian affairs, says that such and so great an island once existed, and this is evidenced by those who composed histories related to the external sea, for they relate that in this time there were 7 islands in the Atlantic Sea sacred to Proserpine, and besides these, 3 immense magnitude sacred to Pluto, Jupiter, and Neptune. And besides this, the inhabitants of the last island, Poseidonus, preserved the memory of the progenious multitude of the Atlantic islands as related to their ancestors, and its governing for many periods all the islands in the Atlantic Sea. From this isle, one may pass to another large island beyond, which are not far from the firm land near which is the true sea. These 7 dwarpas, inaccurately rendered islands, constitute, according to Marsilius, the body of the famous Atlantis, writes Wilford himself, thus evidently shows that Atlantis is the old continent. The Atlantis was destroyed after a violent storm. This is well known to the Puranics, some of whom assert that in consequence of the dreadful convulsions of nature, 6 of the dwarpas disappeared. Even proofs have now been given to satisfy the greatest skeptic. Nevertheless, direct proofs based on exact science are also added. Volumes might be written, however, to no purpose for those who will neither see nor hear except through the eyes and ears of their respective authorities. Hence the teachings of the Roman Catholic scholarists, namely that Hermon, the mount in the land of Mespeth, meaning Athema, destruction, is the same of Mount Armon. As a proof of this, Josephus is often quoted as affirming that this still in his own day enormous bones of giants were daily discovered on it, but it was the land of Balaam, the prophet, whom the Lord loves well, and so mixed up are facts and personages in the same said scholaristic brains, that when the Zohar explains the birds which inspired Balaam to mean serpents, to wit, the wise man and adepts at whose school he had learnt the mysteries of prophecy, and the opportunity is again taken of showing Mount Hermon inhabited by the winged dragons of evil, whose chief is Salem, the Jewish Satan. It is to those unclean spirits chained on the Mount Hermon of the desert that the scapegoat of Israel, whom assumed the name of one of them, Azazel, was sent. Fun times. We say it is not so. The Zohar has been following explanation on the practice of magic, which is called in Hebrew Nakashem, or the serpent's work. It says it is called Nekashem, and I'm probably butchering that, because the magicians work surrounded by the light of the primordial serpent, which they perceive in heaven as a luminous zone composed of myriads and small stars, which means simply the astral light, so called by Apicius Levi and now by the modern occultists. The curse from a philosophical point of view. The foregoing teachings of the secret doctrine, supplemented by universal traditions, must now have demonstrated that the Brahmas and Puranas, the Yethras and Mazdan scriptures, down to the Egyptian, Greek, and Roman, finally to the Jewish sacred records, all have the same origin. None are meaningless and baseless stories invented to entrap the unwary profane. All are allegories intended to convey under a more or less fantastic veil the great truths gathered in the same field of prehistoric tradition. Space forbids us from entering into these 2 volumes into further and more minute details with respect to the 4 races which preceded our own. But before offering to the student the history of the psychic and spiritual evolution of direct antediluvian fathers of the 5th Aryan humanity, and before demonstrating its bearing upon all the other side branches grown from the same trunk, we have the elucidate a few more facts. It has been shown on the evidence of the whole ancient literary world and the institutional speculations of more than one philosopher and scientist of later ages that the tenets of our esoteric doctrine are corroborated by inferential as well as by direct proof in almost every case, that neither the legendary giants nor the lost continents nor yet the evolution of the preceding races are quite baseless tales. In the addenda which close this volume, science will find itself more than once unable to replay. They will, it is hoped, finally dispose of every skeptical remark with regard to the sacred number in nature and our figures in general. Meanwhile, one task is left incomplete, that of disposing of that most pernicious of all the theological dogmas, the curse under which mankind is alleged to have suffered ever since the supposed disobedience of Adam and Eve in the bower of Eden. Created powers in man were the gift of divine wisdom, not the result of sin. This is clearly instanced in the paradoxical behavior of Jehovah, who first curses Adam and Eve, or humanity, for the supposed committed crime, and then blesses his chosen people by saying, "Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth." The curse was not brought on mankind by the 4th race, for comparatively sinless 3rd race. The still more gigantic antediluvians had perished in the same way. Hence, the deluge was not a punishment, but simply a result of a periodical and geological law. Nor was the curse of karma called down upon them for seeking natural union, as all the mindless animal world does in its proper seasons, but for abusing the creative power, for desecrating the divine gift and wasting the life essence for no purpose except bestial and personal gratification. When understood, the 3rd chapter of Genesis will be found to refer to the Adam and Eve of the closing 3rd and the commencing 4th races. In the beginning, conception was as easy for a woman as it was for an animal creation. Nature had never intended that woman should bring forth her young ones in sorrow. Since that period, however, during evolution of the 4th race, they came enmity between its seed and the serpent seed, the seed of product of karma and divine wisdom. For the seed of woman or lust bruised the head of the seed of the fruit of wisdom and knowledge by turning the holy mystery of procreation into animal gratification. Hence, the law of karma bruised the heel of the Atlantean race by gradually changing physiologically, morally, physically, and mentally the whole nature of the 4th race of mankind, until from the healthy king of animal creation of the 3rd race, man became In the fifth, our race, a helpless, scathless being, and has now become the wealthiest heir on the globe to constitutional and hereditary disease, the most consciously and intelligently bestial of all animals. This is the real curse from the physiological standpoint, almost the only one touched upon in the Kabbalistic esotericism. Viewed from this aspect, the curse is undeniable, for it is evident the intellectual evolution in its progress hand in hand with the physical has certainly been a curse instead of a blessing, a gift quickened by the lords of wisdom who have poured on the human manas the fresh dew of their own spirit and essence. The divine Titan has then suffered in vain, and one feels inclined to regret his benefaction to mankind and sigh for those days so graphically depicted by Asclepius in his Prometheus Bound, when, at the close of the first Titanic age, the age that followed that of ethereal man, of the pious Kandu and Pramloka, nascent physical mankind, still mindless and physiologically senseless, and described as seeing they saw in vain, hearing they heard not, but like shapes in dreams, through the long time all things at random mix. Our saviors, a word I am not pronouncing, and other divine sons of the flame of wisdom personified by the Greeks in Prometheus, may well in the injustice of human heart be left unrecognized and unthanked. They may, in our ignorance of the truth, be indirectly cursed for Pandora's gift, but to find themselves proclaimed and declared by the mouth of the clergy, the evil ones, is too heavy a karma for him who dared alone. When Zeus ardently desired to quench the entire human race, to save that mortal race from perdition, or as a suffering Titan is made to say, from sinking blasted down to Hades' gloom. For this be the dire tortures I am bent, grievous to suffer, petitious to behold, I who did mortals pity. The course remarked very permanently, vast boon was thou gavest unto mortals. Prometheus answers, yea, and besides 'twas I that give them fire. Chorus, have now those lived, how now these short-lived creatures flame-eyed fire, I am by it full many arts will learn. You see, my brain's not working. But with the arts the fire received has turned into the greatest curse, the animal element and consciousness of its past possession has changed periodical instinct into chronic animalism and sensuality. It is this which hangs over humanity like a heavy funeral pall. Thus arises the responsibility of free will. The titanic passions which represented humanity in its darkest aspect, the restless instability of the lower passions and desires, then, with self-asserting insolence, they bid defiance to the resistance of law. Prometheus have endowed men, according to Plato's Protagoras, with that wisdom which ministers to physical well-being. But the lower aspect of manas of the animal kama, having remained unchanged, instead of untainted mind, heaven's first gift, there was created the eternal vulture of ever unsatisfied desire of regret and despair, coupled with dreamlike feebleness that fetters the blind race of mortals, unto the day when Prometheus is released by his heaven-appointed deliverer, Heracles. Now Christian Roman Catholics especially have tried to prophetically connect the drama with the coming of Christ. No greater mistake could be made. The true theosophist, the pursuer of divine wisdom and worshiper of absolute perfection, the unknown deity, which is neither Zeus nor Jehovah, will demur to such an idea. Pointing to antiquity, he will prove that there never was an original sin, but only an abuse of physical intelligence, the psychic being guided by the animal and both putting out the light of the spiritual. He will say, all ye who can read between the lines, study ancient wisdom in the old dramas, the Indian and the Greek, read carefully to the one just mentioned, one enacted on the theaters of Athens 2,400 years ago, namely Prometheus Bound. The myth belongs to neither Hesiod nor Asclepius, but as Bunsen says, it is older than the Hellenes themselves, for it belongs in truth to the dawn of human consciousness. The crucified Titan is the personified symbol of the collective logos, the host, and all the lords of wisdom, or the heavenly man who incarnated in humanity. Moreover, as his name Prometheus, meaning he who sees before him, or I don't know how to get that out. Shows that future, something with future. It's not future, but it's that word, okay? In the arts, he devised and taught to humanity psychological insights was not the least. For as he complains to the daughters of Oceanus, of prophecies, the various modes I fix, and among dreams did first discriminate the truthful vision, and mortals guided to a mysterious art, all arts to mortals, for Prometheus came. Leaving for a few pages the main subject, let us pause and see what may be hidden meaning of this, the most ancient, as it is the most suggestive of traditional allegories, as it relates directly to the early races. This will be no real digression. The subject of Asclepius' drama, The Trilogy is Lost, is known to all culture readers. The demigod robes the gods, the Elohim, of their secret, the mystery of the creative fire. For this sacrilegious attempt, he is struck down by Kronos and delivered unto Zeus, the father and creator of mankind, which he would wish to have blind intellectually and animal-like, a personal deity which will not see man like one of us. Hence Prometheus, the fire and light giver, is chained on Mount Caucasus and condemned to suffer torture. But the triform fates, karma, whose decrees, as the Titan says, even Zeus, even he, the foreordained, cannot escape. Ordain those suffering will last only to the day when a son of Zeus, a son bearing stronger than his sire, one of thine Io's own descendants it must be, is born, this son will deliver Prometheus, the suffering humanity, from his own fatal gift. His name is He Who Has to Come. On the authority then of these few lines, which, like any other allegorical sentence, may be twisted into almost any meaning, namely on the words pronounced by Prometheus and addressed to Io, the daughter of Inkaios, persecuted by Zeus, a whole prophecy is constructed by some Catholic writers, says the crucified Titan, and port in past belief the speaking oaks, by which full clearly in no ridding phase, waste hailed as the illustrious spouse of Zeus, stroking thee with touch alone of alarming hand, then thou, dark Ephetos, shalt bear whose name records his sacred gendering. These were construed by several fanatics, two French people that I don't know how the hell to get their names out, amongst others, into a clear prophecy. Io is the mother of God, who are told, and dark epapho Christ. But the latter has not dethroned his father except metaphorically. If one has to regard Jehovah as that father, nor has the Christian Savior hurled his father down into Hades. Prometheus says in verse, it's 930, that Zeus will be humbled yet as for himself. Such marriage he prepares, which from his throne of power to nothingness shall hurl him down, so shall be all fulfilled his father Cronos' curse. Then let him sit, confiding in his lofty thunder pearls, and wielding with both hands the fiery bolt. For these shall not avail, but fall he shall, and fall disgraceful, not to be endured. Sorry, guys. Dark Epapos was the dying Isos, the son of Zeus and of Demeter, in the Sebastian Mysteries, during which the father of the gods, assuming the shape of serpent, begot on Demeter, Dionysos, or the solar Bacchus. Io is the moon, and at the same time the eve of a new race, and so is Demeter in the present case. The Promethean myth is a prophecy indeed, but it does not relate to any of the cyclic saviors who have appeared periodically in various countries and among various nations in their transitory conditions of evolution. It points to the past of the mysteries of cyclic transformations, in the series of which mankind, having passed from the ethereal to the solid physical state, from spiritual to physiological procreation, is now carried onward on the opposite arc of the cycle, towards that second phase of the primitive state, when women knew no man and human progeny was created and not begotten. I'm going to leave it here, guys. This is going to be part 1 of a way longer reading. It's getting close to my bedtime because back to work I go. So I'm going to, and my brain's not functioning apparently. So I'm going to make a note live so we know that I made a note. And we'll pick up on the next time, guys. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within, be the shoulder, be the lighthouse, seed your truths, light that path forward. Sorry for all the mispronunciations, a little frustration, and all of this going on. Can't help it at all. It's just what it is. But until the next time, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, maybe not share. That's up to you. Subscribe to my channel and have a blessed and beautiful day wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.